Ladies and gentlemen, boys and the girls, welcome to a Joy of Hobbying live show. So today we're going to be working on the Black Series Hunter figure. This is a great figure. It's a really nice figure, but I want to do a little bit of paintwork on it. And the paintwork that we're going to be doing today is pretty easy. It's also, for the most part, fairly inexpensive. We're just going to be using cheap Walmart craft paints. So, this is like a perfect thing that you can try if you're new to customizing or you're new to doing projects like this. The materials are cheap, the figures are fairly cheap, and, it doesn't really require a ton of skill. More so, a little bit of trial and error and, just kind of the determination to actually try to get it done. So, as far as the paints that we're using today, we're going to try Granite Gray by Apple Barrel, Pewter Gray, and Dark Granite, again by Apple Barrel, Black, again by Apple Barrel. And these Apple Barrel paints, you can get them for like 50 cents at Walmart, and so they're pretty cheap. As far as like some of the nicer paints we're going to use, we're using Vallejo Model Air Steel and Gunmetal. These are about $3 to $4 a bottle. But I do believe at Walmart that they carry, just back the camera out just a bit. I do believe that they carry these like similar versions at Walmart. But yeah, so I only have a few minutes. OFAC is going live at 2:30, and I don't want to impede on their program. So let me put up this banner here, and we'll get started. So as far as Hunter goes, you can see they do have a little bit of weathering on the figure, but if you watch the show, the level of weathering is quite a bit more than this. So let's start with, we're going to get a paper towel, and we're basically going to use like really shitty old brushes today. So I've been known to not take care of my brushes, so for something like this, you don't really want to use your best brushes. So we're going to pick a few of these, and let's see what we can do. So we're going to come in, I want to say Granite Gray. So we'll try Granite Gray first. So it's a little light, and we'll see how that looks. And if it's too light, we can kind of calibrate. Let me do one thing real quick. Let me turn this camera off for 1 second. And let me wipe the lens. Okay, there we go. Let's see if that's better. Now, as far as setting up a dry brush goes, I have a little bit of paint here on this surface. And we're going to get a little bit of paint on the brush, not too much. And then we're going to take our paper towel, and we're going to work that paint into the bristles. And it'll kind of give us something like this. And you want to get a majority of the paint off of the brush, right? So something like that. And obviously, of course, it is a dry brush technique, so you don't want to have the brush have like water on it. It has to be completely dry. And we're going to look on the figure, and we're just going to start kind of dabbling some paint on some of these edges here. And we're just going to kind of work our way around the figure, just adding just a little bit of these worn edges. And we're going to come back later, and we're going to add a little bit of metal to that. But for now, we're just going to start kind of adding just a little bit of weathering here. And if this color is too light, we can switch to like the dark granite or the pewter gray. So we're just going to work our way around the figure. And you don't want to be too consistent with like the weathering. You want to have like some places where it's more, some places where it's less. You also want to obviously avoid like these areas here, and we can touch those up or clean them up later. But since those are fabric, they wouldn't really weather like, the armor would, in theory. And what I like to do is focus on the hard edges. Those are the areas that, through normal use, they would typically, get scratched up, or the paint would wear off. And that's kind of what this is simulating, is just like the undertone of the armor. And I mean, you can see this doesn't really take a lot of skill. It's just a matter of going through and actually doing it. And the nice thing is with this kind of paint, let's say you make a big mistake. You could just get like a Q-tip or get some water or even just your finger and you can brush it off. And what we're creating is this effect here. And essentially what we're going to do is go over all the edges of the armor like this, and also like the insides of the armor. And we're just going to start doing this, and we can use different brushes. Like I have this brush here, which is in a lot worse shape. And that'll give us some real nice texture. I did mention that you can easily remove this paint. However, that's really only when it's kind of like freshly applied. Once it dries, it'll actually dry pretty decent. So it's not like once it dries, if you touch it one time, it'll, you'll have all the paint missing. So that should be noted as well. But yeah, this is a great figure. If you like the new show, so far they've released Crosshair and Hunter, and they've also put up for pre-order Tech and Wrecker. No Echo yet, but I imagine at some point he'll probably be coming to the line. And I mean, they're just really nice figures. They're $20. You can get them at Walmart, you can get them at Target. And for me, like, I think the Hot Toys ones are probably going to be real cool, but one, those are not going to be out for a very long time. And two, I mean, you can get the whole team for like $100 instead of like $1,000. So certainly nothing to complain about there. So we're just going to keep going, just kind of edge dry brushing. But yeah, weathering is like my absolute favorite thing to do. I enjoy painting, don't get me wrong, but kind of like free I don't even call it like free painting, but painting where you could just kind of do whatever. You're not really painting within the lines or trying to match a person's features. I mean, to me, that's just way more fun. And it's way more forgiving. I mean, you really can't mess this up. Paint is cheap. The figures are cheap. Worst case, you really mess up, and then you just, rinse the figure off in the sink, and then you're good to go for round 2. Or worst case, you really hate it and the paint's dry and you just $20 more and you got a new figure. It's not the end of the world. And it's really good practice because a lot of these techniques that you can do here, you can scale them up to like Hot Toy scale. And I mean, they pretty much look as good in Hot Toy scale. So we'll start getting this back plate here. And if you look at the show, I mean, the clones, they're super weathered. So it's almost like, I typically am a little heavy-handed with the weathering, but it's almost like you can't over-weather it, right? At least in my opinion. For these, at least. I see a lot of people, like, they'll say, oh, I'm going to weather a figure, and then that just consists of them doing a black wash, which is fine, don't get me wrong. But I think if you really want your figure to look, to take it to that next level, I recommend doing something like this. And that's nothing against people that just do black washes, but in my opinion, I think it's a good thing to add this detail. And the comment you always get is like, oh, well, it should have came like that from the factory. And I mean, these are $20 toys, so I don't think that for that price you're going to get someone at the factory with a brush for an hour times 10,000 or however many of these they make. So I personally don't mind it. I think these figures are good enough for the price, and I guess everyone's opinion is different on that, but I think these are pretty good for what you pay for. We're gonna keep going. We got about maybe 20% of the figure, 30% done with this color thus far, and we can be as light or as heavy-handed as we want with this. So I'm going to try to get some right here on the perimeter of this red here. Get a little bit more paint on the brush. Seth says put some browns and grays and blues in there. Maybe. This is already a pretty bluish gray, so I don't really think I need to add any blue. So we're just adding just that little bit of paint right there. I think it just makes it look a lot better. But that's just my opinion. And I don't think we're going to be able to finish this in the time I have before OFAC starts, so if we don't, you know, you guys will have a general idea of how to do this process, and, you know, we can go from there. Oh, Seth says not you, just adding to the combo. Yeah, for sure. For sure. Let's get some dry brushing on this knee here. Yeah, weathering is like my absolute favorite thing to do. I think probably my favorite joy of hobbing that we've done thus far is when I weathered that Wally figure. And that stream started off bad. I just did not enjoy the beginning of that stream. I tried to film it in the garage, and it was rough in the beginning. And now the paint just wasn't, you know, just was not doing well for me. And that was my fault, but we saved it at the end, I think. So we're going to touch up these, these hard edges on the shins here. Get some paint going on those. Yep. Seth says instead of just a black wash. Yep. Actually, the blue washes and the red washes, I never thought of that. And I noticed Victoria had been doing it in a lot of the sculpts that we were painting, and I thought they looked fantastic. But a lot of times when she's painting, like, you know, I'm not sitting there over her shoulder watching it, so I never really saw the full process. And then Sideshow did a video. They have some real good painters for their prototypes. They had a video where they were showing how they paint head sculpts for their quarter scale pieces, and in the video they were talking about using blue washes and stuff like that, and I got to actually see the process of those, and it is remarkable what like a blue and a red wash will do to a flesh tone. It's like game changing. And for me, I don't paint a lot of head sculpts, but I was like, God damn, I need to try that next time I paint. And I've done it a few times, and it always comes out really good. That's like, to me, that was like game changing. I mean, it was that good. Yeah, those videos are great. I really like to see that behind the scenes process, because for me, Victoria taught me a lot, but a lot of it I kind of just learned on my own. So seeing someone that's real talented do that stuff, you know, in a short video, because there's some great people that do tutorials, but it's like a 20-hour tutorial, and it's like, bro, I don't have 20 hours. Give it to me in 5 minutes. I'll learn everything I need to know in 5 minutes. But yeah, that was really cool. Getting these edges here. I think we're almost ready to move on to the next step here in a few minutes. What is it? 2:09. We got 20 minutes left. Yeah, Seth said red does great for flesh tones. You are not wrong, my guy. You are absolutely not wrong. Let's start picking up the pace just a little bit. I don't want Ian to yell at me if I run into OFAC time. Okay, we got one more arm left, the backpack and the helmet, and then we should be able to move on. Yeah, fortunately, I was not able to track down the sniper figure, but Rainer from one of the hosts was able to find me one, so that was awesome. Because I know those fucking figures are going to be real hard to find here in the next few, now that Bad Batch is out. And there's some cool stuff, man. Honestly, like that show, I was like, damn, made me want a Tarkin, made me want, you know, made me want a bunch of stuff. And I think they're even making like the let's get a little bit here. Now you see there I went a little heavy, but we're just gonna leave it because, you know, we can always work that out later. They released one of the shock troopers from the show. Like, I think it's like the sergeant, the main one, or the captain or whatever. But that looked amazing too. I'm like, God damn, I definitely don't really want to spend like $100 on Black Series, but fuck, they look good. I might have to. Yeah, I kind of like that being a little heavy right there. Now, one thing, Adam Savage always says this on Tested, but humans are real bad at making things random. And so if you ever do something when you're doing this and you're like, that's a bit off, it's almost better to keep it, right? Unless you're just like real, like you just real heavy handed it, but it's almost better to keep it because by nature, we tend to like observe that and try to change it. But I almost think it's better to keep it. Again, unless it's just real bad, then, you know, but your mileage may vary. But yeah, I've seen a few people do these repaints of this figure, and I was like, God damn, I need to try that. And here we are. And usually with this kind of work, you know, after like 24 to 48 hours, the paint's usually on there pretty good. So if you make a big mistake, you can usually correct it pretty quickly. Okay, let's just get a little bit on the upper chest. And this is still all with the, what color is this? The Granite Gray by Apple Barrel. Get some on that armor right there. And we're probably going to cover up some of the factory paint, but that's fine. Like this gray here. But we'll come back over it shortly with some more of that silver paint. You can see there that detail that we're creating with this paint application. It looks pretty good. I'm not really saying it's going to look Hot Toys level when we're done, but, you know, just adding a little bit of detail is just going to make this figure pop a little bit more on the shelf. Okay, let's just add some paint kind of in some of these flat areas, some scratches. I think that looks pretty good. All right, so let's weather the backpack real quick. So we'll pop that on. Get some more paint on the brush. And this should be pretty easy because it's a lot of just hard edges. So we could just literally drag the brush on it like this. The one thing that really bothers me on the show, like it actually really bothers me, but Hunter has a blaster pistol, and it, like, he doesn't have anywhere that it's stored, and I guess it's maybe stored like on the small of his back, but he just like randomly pulls it out, and then like the scene preceding, there's nothing on his back, so I don't understand where he's pulling the pistol out of. And then on the figure, there's nowhere to store the pistol, so either you rock the knife and the pistol, or you rock the blaster, and then you just have the pistol. You don't know where to put it. And I need weapon storage. That's just, I like weapon storage. All right, let me put a little bit more of this paint on the palette. I'm also going to start coming in with some of this steel. So we'll get some of that. And let's see what we could do with that. So let me just finish up with load the brush up, get most of it off. And let's just come in here on the waist. And the goal here, just, subtle weathering. You don't want it to be too crazy, but, on the shelf, those little scratches, they're going to add some detail to the figure, and that's never a bad thing. So I don't know if this brush is going to work, but I'm just curious to see what it looks like. We got some silver paint on here, and let's see what we can do. I don't love it. I don't hate it. Let's try a different brush. So the thing is, I have a lot of brushes that are real shitty, so we have a few choices to try out. This one's a little softer, but it's equally shitty. And if that doesn't work, we can just go back to the brush we've been using. So that's the beauty of it. So got some silver paint there. And let's try to see what we can do with this. Maybe just a little bit more paint. 2:15. We got about 15 minutes. So let's see if we can get some of this silver paint applied. Let's try one more brush, and if that doesn't work, we'll go back to the one we started with. We got Manny in the chat. What's up, Manny? Manny does some fantastic paint work as well. I think I believe, if I remember correctly, he has some tutorials on his YouTube channel, Boogie Manny, and a lot of his are, there we go. A lot of his are horror related, and he does some fantastic work with some of the Myers stuff that he does. It's good stuff. He's also beat me to the punch on a few projects, and he's got some good stuff on his channel. Great reviews. Now that's a little bit heavy-handed, so we're gonna just rub that off just a little bit. I think there was a little bit too much paint on the brush there. So let's work here. Now on the figure itself, there is a lot of sculpted in, like, damage, so we're gonna make sure to pay extra attention to those areas, like here on the shin. So we're gonna pay a little bit of extra metal to that. Just like that. Now the one thing I'm struggling with how I want to handle it is there is some like real deep scratches in some of the armor, and I don't necessarily want to do black wash if I can avoid it, but I almost feel like I kind of have to. So I gotta think about that. I do have to think about that, about how I want to handle that. So let's go here, and I know the figure looks goofy right now because I'm just kind of going around real quick and adding paint here and there, but once you're done and it's posed up, it'll look great. Like this right here, this would get a lot of wear and tear because it's on the arms and it sticks out a bit, so add some extra weathering to that. Shoulder pads also. Especially right here where it transitions, comes up a step. Manny said these figures are dope too. They're so fucking good. I was debating last night for a few hours, like, do I want to add a little bit of paint onto it? Do I not? And eventually I just couldn't resist. I was like, dude, I have to do it. These look so good. But yeah, OFAC should be starting here in about 10 minutes, so Yeah, Manny says, does the helmet slide over the sculpt? It does. Yep. And that's, I mean, and it's digital printed too, so it's great because usually I would repaint a sculpt, but I'm glad I don't have to repaint it because it does slide over. And I know the paint would just rub off if I did that. I know that from experience. Let's start going around the edges with this steel. Gonna go a little heavy on the edges there. The 3D models in this show are ridiculous. Like the level of detail, oops, and the weathering is ridiculous. Okay, let's add some back here on the back of the thighs. And the thing is, like, I mean, you could certainly spend as long as you want on this, like, 2 hours, 3 hours, 30 minutes. My goal for something like this, I know I'm not going to be able to finish it on this stream, but my goal is to, for this to be like an hour-long project, tops. Because, if you think about it, you have to do it for 4 more characters after this one, if you get the full team. And I don't really want to spend like 12 hours on a figure if I'm about to do it 5 times. And I'll probably have to weather the helmet off here because we're starting to run into OFAC time almost. But I'll show you guys one more thing after this, and then we'll call it a stream. Okay, so we're getting there, slowly but surely. Let's add some more gunmetal, or the steel rather. There and there. I always like to weather points like that real good. I don't know why, but it's just a thing that I really enjoy to do. Also up here, that looks really good. And like I mentioned earlier, this is something that anyone can do. It's not difficult. Doesn't take a long time. The figures are cheap. The paints are cheap. There's people that will charge you like $100 to do this or more just to do weathering, and anyone can do it. Okay. So that's coming out really good. And I just have a few more minutes. So the last thing I'm going to show you guys, we're going to go back to the brush we started with, so something like this. And we're going to take some gunmetal. So that was steel that we were using. We're going to use gunmetal, which is a little darker. And you look at this right here, right? This is just a black piece of plastic. And we're going to take some of this gunmetal. We're going to work that into the bristles. We're going to come to our paper towel and dry that off. You take your rifle and you're just gonna very lightly brush this over. And this takes seconds of work to do, and it's a very low skill thing, but it's gonna make this rifle look like 1,000 times better. And obviously we'll get the part where the hand goes at the end. But I mean, just looking at that right there, compared to when we started like 2 seconds ago, I mean, that's fantastic. I mean, you literally can't mess this up, right? It's so easy. Well, you can if you use too much, but... And then if you're like, you know what, that looks great, but I want to add just a little bit more detail, get some of that steel, that bright color, and just very lightly just go over certain parts of the blaster, maybe the handle where it's being held a lot. And just give it just a little bit more. And that, you see how bright that is compared to the gunmetal? Just a little bit more. A little bit more here. And that's going to take this figure, even just that alone, if you didn't even do the weathering. 2 seconds of that, and then you're good to go. And it's just going to make it look a little bit nicer. And so we went from like a black plastic like this to something with depth. Jason says it's easy, but people are afraid to try it themselves, or maybe not have the paints and brushes. I like to keep Clorox wipes handy, use them to wipe any mistakes away. Yep, you're exactly right. And the paints are so cheap. That's the thing, right? People think these paints are like just insanely expensive, but they're not. They're, even the Walmart version of the gunmetal and the silver is dirt cheap. I mean, you're talking like less than a few bucks. And then brushes, they're only, you can get a pack of craft brushes for like $3 or $4. And that's all that I use is craft brushes, and I just throw them away when they're past their lifespan. And look at that, 2 seconds. And we made this pistol look 100 times better. And then if you wanted to, once this is dry, you have to wait a few minutes, like an hour or two. Once it's fully dry, go in there with some black paint and black wash it. Make a black wash and get some depth back in there if you want. But that's perfectly fine for what I need. But yeah, that's it. I think that's it for the Joy of Hobbying today. I don't want to run into OFAC's time. They're going on in 2:30, so that's probably about 3 minutes. I'm going to continue to work on this, and once it's done, I'll post some pictures on Ox, and on Ox I'll describe the steps I did, and then on Tuesday also, if I did any extra steps, we'll talk about them. But thanks everyone for tuning in. I know it was just a quick little stream, but be sure to check out OFAC. They're going live here in a bit, and I know they're going to put on a good show as per usual. We'll catch you guys in the next Joy of Hobbying.